Sharpening your tools does not need to be a long, laborious task. What I've done is I've broken it down into 3 stages. These 3 steps shouldn't take more than 30 seconds to do. The quality of my work was not up to scratch. I was missing out stage number 3. Sharpening needs to be simple, repeatable, and efficient. If it's all of those things, you'll do it more often and you'll do it before you actually need to do it. The chances are you are not sharpening them as often as you should be. Simplify it and you will. I'm also going to let you know my one tip at the end of this video, the one thing I changed within this workshop that revolutionised how I sharpen my tools. Let's concentrate to start with on repeatable. What you need to be doing is finding a way that works for you and you can repeat it without error every single time. And for that, what I'm going to recommend is the honing guide. Strap your chisel in, strap your plane blade in, whatever it is, you'll get the same angle every time, so long as you use this piece of scrap wood. This scrap wood has got all of the different blocks on it, and each one of these represents an angle that I'm hoping to get on one of my tools. These come with a 25-degree bevel on them. We'll probably put a secondary bevel on them. That's what we're going to do today, so that way you're not sharpening the entire chisel every time that you do it. How do you know you're getting the same bevel each time and not just re-correcting angles and working against yourself? Well, that's where this block comes in. But how do you establish where to put the blocks? There's a couple of different ways. One, have a look on the side of your honing guide. Some of them have got it written right on there, the distance between the edge of the wood, or where the honing guide would be, and the tip of the chisel, which is where the block would be. That's easy, or get it online. The numbers are up there. I put my chisel inside the honing guide. I then got a ruler and I made sure that it was flush on the bevel when it was touching the wheel. So that means when you put it on the diamond stone, you will be grinding a 25-degree angle. I then took it over to a piece of wood, put it against the piece of wood, marked where the tip was, and put another scrap piece of wood on there. And that will mean I am getting the same angle every single time that I am sharpening. And I do that now with this block with all of my chisels. So I have repeatability, I have efficiency, and I have accuracy. What I then needed was the secondary bevel. So I just moved it up a little bit, used my ruler again, and tested until I could literally see light all apart from the first millimetre of that bevel. I then put it against the block, and I set my block for the 30-degree secondary bevel there. I've done that for all of my blades that I like to sharpen, because plane blades come in all different shapes and sizes. I've got my vintage one, I've got my low angle block plane, and my low angle sweetheart plane. Each one of these needs its own block, and then that way I just need to apply the 3 steps of sharpening to each of these blades, and it just makes it so much simpler, so much more repeatable, and you are just not working against yourself, which is what we really want to do here. You need something to sharpen on. Now I recommend these diamond plates. These are really inexpensive. I picked them up off Amazon. Similar to whetstones, they come with a different grit level. 400, 600 and 1000 is what I've got here. So 400 being the coarsest, 1000 being the finest. I'm probably not even going to use the 400 today because we're just tuning up. My 3 stages don't even involve taking it to that coarser level. Now on a chisel and a plane blade, the 3 steps are really similar. Step 1, address the back on both. Step 2, address the secondary bevel. And then step 3, I'm going to tell you about step 3 at the end once I've tuned these 2 up. So let's start with the chisel. The first thing we're going to do is step 1. That is the back. We're only going to work on the first 1.5 inches because that's really all you need when you're doing any project at our level of woodworking. And for that, I'm just going to take it over to the stones and I'm going to do a very quick going on the 600 and the 1000. All you're looking for is just to give it a bit of a clean up at the back and to get rid of some of the scrapes and scratches you might have put in. I will say this with every step, if it needs more, give it more. Don't be afraid to, but this at the moment is just a tune up. I zoomed in too soon. Add in that you need to wear gloves. I haven't got any gloves, but you should. I've only done really 1 inch there, and that's good enough for what we need for right now. Couple of things to note on there. When I was going flat on the stone, do not put pressure on your handle because you will get a funny angle either which way. Put all your pressure here. Same will go for the plane blade, and I'll remind you at the time. So for step 2, we're going to be doing the secondary bevel. And so for that, we just notch the chisel up against where it says 30 degrees on our block. Repeatability, remember. and then we tighten the honing guide with a screwdriver. Now the thing to note with the honing guide is that the chisel sits in the middle here, just slightly below the surface, whereas a plain blade sits on the top. And then we go to the stones. What I like to do to find out whether my secondary bevel's in the right place is I like to just put a little bit of Sharpie on that primary bevel. All this means is that we know where we're making contact and we can very easily see if we're sharpening the right area of the chisel. 600 first. You can see that I've only touched the first 1.5 mil of that. That is a perfect secondary bevel. Then wipe, then 1000. Now that is literally how simple step 2 is, and we are ready for step 3. But before we go to step 3, let's do the plain blade. Now for step 1 of the plain blade, we're going to do something ever so slightly different. Instead of flattening the first 1.5 inches that we did on the chisel, we're just going to do the top 4 mil. The reason you can't do that on a chisel is because the chisel does need to be flat, because where you're paring things, it needs to lie flat on the piece. Whereas a plain blade, sitting inside the plane itself, this bit isn't really making contact with the wood further up because it's behind the chip breaker. So we just need the first 4 mil. So what we need to do is raise the back of the plain blade up by just a couple of degrees. And the way we do this is with a ruler. We lie the ruler onto our sharpening block along the side, and then when we put our plain blade onto it, it elevates the back up. Now, quick tip, if you don't want to go out and buy yourself a ruler just for this, couple of layers of blue tape, slips around a bit, but it does the job. We don't want to put too much pressure on the back here because we don't want to keep waggling the blade. What we want to do is to put the ruler down, blade on top, and then with pressure just over this end, just move it back and forward. If you've never done this before, start 600 and then go to the 1000. So, starting from the back, tipping it down, we just move it up and down. You can see there that I've just done the top 4 mil, and that's all we need. And we are going straight on to step 2 on this tune-up. Really, really simple. Back in the honing guide, using our blocks, we're going to set up our honing guide again, making sure that the honing guide sits nicely against the bottom of the wood there before we crimp it off, and then crimp it off tight with a screwdriver. Now this is where it is all very similar to the chisel. We're just going to go 600 and 1000 and give it a clean off. That's it. Okay, I've got quite a long secondary bevel on there. It's way too long. If you have the same problem where your secondary bevel is a little bit long, all you need to do is pop another piece of wood underneath your block, just to drag the point away from the honing guide. It's really simple, and then going forwards, it will make everything come back together. It doesn't mean that this is unusable, it just means that to keep sharpening it at that level, I'm taking off more material than I need to, and sharpening more than I need to. With a plain blade that you never needed to do with a chisel, what I want to do is just put a very slight camber on this. I want to take the corners down just a smidge, and all I do here is I put my pressure across onto this corner and just drag it back 5 times. And I do the same on the far corner on this side. And then I find 2 points halfway between that and the middle on each side. And then I'm going to finish with 5 on the corners again. You're not rocking the honing guide, you're just adjusting where you're putting your pressure. You can number the points 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So you do double the pulls on 1 and 5 than you do on 2 and 4, and you've already done 3 when you started off the job. And that's enough to give you a little bit of a rounding to stop the corners digging into your work when you're planing. So by my count, we have done steps 1 and 2 with the chisel and the plain blade. We are now on to step 3. I've held this back from you, not necessarily to frustrate you, although it probably has, but also because I want added emphasis to go upon it. I used to use steps 1 and 2 like you've just seen there, and I was getting so frustrated with the results I was getting. What I didn't realise is that by missing out step 3, I had sharp, I didn't have super sharp, razor sharp, whatever you want to describe it as. I didn't have the hair on your arm cutting sharp. And the way to get that is with this. This is a strop. Whether you've got the leather attached to your workbench or on a paddle like this, why it's a paddle, I'm not entirely sure. This is what you will use to finish off the work. So first job is just to charge it up with polishing compound, lock it down nice and secure, find the primary, balance your finger on it if you need to, and just lift it up a couple of degrees. Pressure of your arm, the weight of your arm, no more. You're going to do 5 strokes on the front, 3 pulls on the back, no pressure on the handle downwards, just pulling. Now I'm going to do 4 or 5 alternates. So 1, 2, and that is now razor sharp and ready to go. The plane is exactly the same, no difference. This is a very inexpensive part of the sharpening process, but like everything else, it does need to have a couple of words of warning attached. The biggest mistake I think I made with it was I was pushing too hard down when I was trying to run the bevel across it. Now, what that does is it pushes the leather and indents it, so you actually end up scraping the tip of your chisel on the leather, and that will take the edge off it. Don't put any pressure downwards on the back handle or upwards. Just pull it away that way. Just horizontal pressure sideways. Horizontal and sideways? Just sideways pressure. And that way you won't round it off or risk rounding it off in any way. But are they sharp? We're going to test them out at the end. The last thing we're going to work on today is the card scraper. I genuinely thought it was beyond me when I first started woodworking. What I didn't realise is this takes you to the next level. This doesn't drag you down, this lifts you up. You should be able to feel a burr with the back of your nails on the 4 cutting surfaces. This one, that one, and the 2 on the bottom. The way we do this is by rolling the metal over in a microscopic burr. Let me show you something. Just like the others, I've got this down to a 3-step procedure, and it is so simple. Imagine this card scraper from the side on, and I'll blow it up, magnifying. So, the first step we need to do is to take off any existing burrs. Imagine you've got like a hairy bit here, so you flatten the sides and you flatten the top so it is a perfect square top again. After that, step 2, you draw the burrs upwards, and then we're left with something that looks like that. Step 3 is to roll the top. So we roll over our burrs into cutting blades, like that. In fact, more like that. And that is on all of our cutting sides. I promise you, it is so simple. Okay, for step 1, we need to make this card scraper utterly useless. We need to take off any existing burr that's left on there. Now, you can use a file it off, or like me, I'm going to use my diamond stone, and I'm just going to take it off using that. Need to keep the card scraper perfectly upright to clean the top, and then perfectly flat to clean the sides. I'm going to use an engineer square. You could use a square block of wood, anything you know is square, or you could freestyle it if you want to, if you feel comfortable. It's totally up to you. And then we do the sides. Well, for step 2, we need to use the burnisher. This is stronger than this as a metal, and it's rounded, so it will move the metal. Right, so now we just want to set the card scraper just back from the bench, and then what we're going to do is we're going to take the burnisher at a very slight angle, sort of 5 degrees or 6 degrees, something like that, and then we're just going to run across that edge about 20 times, 15 times, something like that. And you're coming in at something similar to this, just back and forth like that. Doesn't need a lot of pressure, just needs the weight of what you are holding it with. Just and what that's done is just push the metal up into a microscopic, teeny tiny little burr up there. So now we need to fold the burr over. For step 3, I've just brought my Moxon vise up just so that I've got somewhere to clamp the card scraper, because what you want is to have the card scraper upright, 90 degrees. And what we need to do now is take our burnisher and roll that microscopic burr over on both sides. So we need it at this angle for that side, and this angle for this side. And we want to take about 6 passes on that side and 6, and it is that simple. And once you've done it, use the back of your nails carefully, and you can feel that microscopic burr that you've put on there. But is it sharp? Let's put them all to the test right now. To test it, I just take a piece of paper and does it cut it cleanly? If the answer is yes, that's as sharp as you will need it. Do the same for the plain blade, being very careful. Clean lines. If you're squishing the paper and it's ruffling up under your blade, you're not getting a clean slit, then you need to take it back to the highest grit and then take it back onto the strop one last time and give it another go. I want to test the card scraper as well. Let's get some wood out and really test these. I tried to take a really thick shaving there. Look at that. Nice thin shavings. If you've got dust, it's because your card scraper is blunt. I promised you a handy tip at the end that will absolutely change the way you sharpen for the better. My set of sharpening stones comes in a really handy carry case, so I can pop these in a drawer, out the way, underneath my workbench, somewhere that I can't see them, they're not getting in my way. Or I could put them somewhere that I'm actually going to use them. Because here's the point, when you're doing some work and your blade gets dull, your plane starts to not perform quite at its optimal level, you need to quickly put an edge on it. If you've got to get these out, set them up, find some water, get a cloth, all of those things, you're not going to do it as much as you should do it. It's human nature. But if this is out on its own station somewhere at the right height for you, with your water spray next to it, a rag there too, everything you need, you can whip the blade out your plane, take it over to the 1000 grit, give it a tune up, 1, 2, 3 steps, get the strop out, and you are good to go back to your work, and you will do it regularly. You'll find you'll enjoy doing it because it will just make your work so much better and easier. You can sharpen your blades in about 30 seconds per tool if this is up and ready to go. If it's out the way, you might not do it until it's too late. If you've enjoyed this sharpening video, I'm pretty sure you'll like these workshop videos or these build videos. Till next time, I'm Mark. Start making.